Ed in San Diego, and this is all about generations in the workplace. And as you could see the chart here, it's a fabulous chart defining the 4 generations. Maybe there's even more, but we're going to hear from a distinguished group of people, an international cast of characters, actually, coming together into what I call affectionately the global meeting room. No cost to join. No, we survive on sponsors and partners, but no cost, no toll gate to get involved. It's open, free global access, 24/7 US and global. And that brings people willingly together to share ideas and to be introduced. So we'll be right back with our cast, very smart people from across time and space, from across borders and cultures, from across industries and silos, across generations. Thank you for being involved. We'll be right back. Clicking the right button. Okay, we're back. And now in the global meeting room are 2 live people. And in the background, we have all kinds of AI note takers. And yes, we have even more people coming in from across time and space, from across borders and cultures. Hopefully they'll show up. They said they would. Dr. KenLloyd is with us from LA. Thank you again. And Rigoberto Vasquez in Mexico City. Welcome again, my friend. And so Rigo, tell me what you're doing later today in Mexico City.
Well, don't have any specific plan so far, but yeah, for tomorrow I have a meeting, but today nothing planned so far.
Well, I wish you well. and may this program lead to hopefully some thicker connections, new connections as well. And so that's the purpose. Well, the underlying purpose is business connections and meetings for follow-up. So feel free to use the chat, and isn't this wonderful? From Amsterdam, Karlijn is joining us again. That is just great. I have to push the right button, excuse me. Okay, great. Karlijn is just an expert in dealing with expat families. Hi, Karlijn. Welcome again.
Hi, everybody. Sorry for running late.
Oh, it's okay. I'm running late too. No problem. So, Karlijn, are you on a time crunch this morning or this afternoon for you?
For the coming hour, you
Yeah,
mean?
yeah. I mean, is that okay? Or if you have to leave earlier, it's quite all right.
No,
It's just,
I booked for the next hour in my calendar so that
okay,
Leslie
that's great.
knows that I'll be a little bit late for dinner.
All right, great. All right, so you can see behind me, I'm going to get out of the way here. I sent you a connection to this chart earlier today, so you can bring it up on your own. My screen only shows part of it. It's quite extensive, and it's just a wonderful portrayal of the different generations at work and tips. This information is not for me. I'm just the purveyor. It comes from experts. And my role as a TV talk show host is public relations and bringing people together and collecting a fee for doing that most of the time. And other times I just give it away free because I just feel benevolent and I obviously want more eyeballs on the show and more participation. And my belief, not just today, but for 30 years, is not to have a toll gate whenever possible, free access. And then we pay bills by having memberships and sponsorships and partners in kind. And everybody's happy and contributing and using the program for their own purposes. So Karlijn, it's very open to use the chat thing down there on the screen and address everybody with your website. Let people know about Expat Valley, is it? And your focus is kids, correct?
Yeah, correct. So
So when you
the
say ombudsman, what does that mean? A spokesman?
it's like an advocate, somebody that advocates for a specific group's rights or needs or well-being, usually a combination of all three.
I think you've met Dr. KenLloyd before. Ken, doesn't that sound like it's a wonderful idea?
Well, ombudsman is a wonderful role to play. I remember back in college when things got a little difficult during the 60s. A lot of schools turned to having an ombudsman, basically a person that you could go to, just as Karlijn is saying, to help with all of the issues that could be falling through the cracks that frankly are so large they shouldn't fall through cracks. You need someone to really be there as an advocate, as an advisor, as a supporter, as a counselor. It's a wonderful role, and it's something that's important within organizations, and certainly when you get into the relocation aspect of it. And then as you tie in with children, Karlijn, that's even more wonderful. That's absolutely great.
It's a wonderful job to have. It's a blessing to do this work.
Isn't that great? So when you look at this chart here, let me get out of the way again. You could see the 4 age brackets there, and it's also in that email a link to this chart, which I have on my in my WordPress. It's much bigger and it's a lot of information, and feel free to download it if you want, or use it. It's not my property; it's someone else's, but they have waived the copyright on reuse, no problem. And so I'm the PR guy. So, but it's all about what the show's about and how people are communicating on the different generations in the workplaces. Pardon me, I'm getting bombarded here with messages. Okay, so I assume that European families are no different than American families when it comes to care of the kids. And kids who are on an international assignment, if they're younger than 11 or so, it doesn't matter where they are. They're just kids doing their thing. But it gets itchy and difficult for the kid as well as the parents if they're teenagers, right?
It's in all transparency. It's each age category comes with its own complications, but in light of talking about different generations, then the teens that are really starting to develop their own personalities, that are more centric in their own universe than younger kids. Younger kids tend to be part of their parents' universe, and their parents are still a very essential role to their well-being. With teens, you usually see that they need to have an environment in which they can really build their own person and persona, their own relationships independent from their parents. And if they need to do that in an uprooted system, so where there's no larger community in subtle and more concrete ways taking care of them, that definitely comes with its complications.
Yeah. Rigo, would you like to comment?
Yeah, well, I think it's a huge war about mentoring, and I don't know if it's mentoring, but helping children to adapt to the new culture. The last time that we connect with Karlijn, I was about to say that at least here in my region in Latin America, in many occasions, at least from the destination service provider.
Oh, you have frozen.
Take for granted that children will adapt to the circumstances, or at least they are the ones that maybe complain less. So I don't know. It's just that we take for granted that this is going to happen, and they easily adapt to the new life. versus the other members of the family that they are adults and they can complain easily and they can elaborate more about what they feel. Yeah, so I mean, just to tell Karlijn what she's doing is, I think, unique. I don't know if you are maybe the only one who has that idea, but generally speaking, it's wonderful. And I wonder how are the difference between Asian cultures, Latin American cultures. I think European and Americans may some kind of similarities, but there are perhaps other extreme cultures, even people from South Africa who may maybe perceive difference the way that children adapt to the circumstances.
So your son is 7 or 8 now?
8 now, yeah.
Yeah, and do you think he understands about international business?
No, I mean, I have spoken to him since he was a little boy in English, and I think he struggled more to learn Spanish because that kind of, I don't know if that was a mistake from my side, but he certainly understand, how the people communicates and the ways that yeah, I mean, generally he has access to more things that I had in my um years when I was a kid. So he understands a little bit. He hasn't had any international experience so far, but I think he's hoping will open when he has the chance to travel.
So does he ask you why you wear these things on your head?
Yeah, because he's aware that I want to avoid noise from the surroundings. So yeah.
Well, I would have said something like, so uh, although it looks funny, like I'm a space cadet or something, the sound I can hear better and the speaking is more clear.
Well, he saw me since he was 1 year old, working always from home. Oh, his perspective about, for me, this is like completely new if I compare versus my parents, that they always work outside of my home. So he used to even communicate with myself with mimics and try to say something else just by watching or us and understanding that I am stressful, I am having a difficult time, and so on. So
Yeah, okay. We welcome Ron Cooper from Washington, D.C. metro area. Welcome, Ron.
Okay, good morning. It's good to be with you.
Yeah, okay. And Karlijn is in Amsterdam, and
Yeah.
Rigoberto in Mexico City, and of course KenLloyd in LA. So we're talking about expat kids, and this is Karlijn's specialty, to be an ombudsman, if you will, a voice and a counselor for families. Um, it, it's more than just families. You're counseling the relocation industry about the value or the need to be uh, and keep that in mind that the kids need help. Especially 10, 11, 12-year olds if they are there. By the way, let me ask you a question on that. Just guess, what percentage of expat kids today are in that age bracket, like 10, 11, 12? Or are they younger?
I think this is really complicated data to get a hands on. At one point, we did quite a bit of research into uprooted children. The United Nations has some statistics into the percentage of children that are part of the group of displaced people, so people that are in a different country than where they are passport holders from. But if you start looking into the actual details, a lot of this information is not available because it's not tracked properly. So there's some countries, like I'm from the Netherlands, we know to the final digit how many people are supposed to be in this country, and then there's a few people that aren't registered in a municipality because they're homeless, but it's the statistics are quite complete. But there are a lot of countries around this globe where there's expat children, where the country systems aren't doing their measurements in that same capacity. So it's really difficult to have a true feeling for how many expats kids are there and what age brackets are they in.
So this is not political, but it is geopolitical. And because we're in the business, our industry is all about migration, only corporate migration. But in Netherlands, I'm not familiar. It's not an open border country, is it? There's restrictions on entry, right?
Yeah, it's part of the Schengen visa system, like in combination with a number of other European countries. Yes.
Again, it's not political, but if you could just take a minute here and tell us and tell the audience who's out there, not at this moment, but will be in about 2 hours when they see this. What's the attitude, a proper attitude from your view about talking about not closed borders, but heavily monitored borders? Because Netherlands is a small country, and I would think most people will look like you, resemble you in some way, or me. But people coming across borders today who are not corporate transferees or an international hire is a problem waiting to explode. And I don't mean that in a danger thing. It's just a problem that's going to multiply itself. And when you have a lot of open border kind of thinking, the U.S. southern border is a perfect example, out of control. And now the other is coming. And so who knows how that's going to work, but it's better to close and then reopen and manage it properly. That's my view. Now, I happen to live on the Mexican-Baja border, San Diego. From where I'm sitting this moment, Tijuana is 8 miles. And more than 100,000 commuters cross that border legally through the checkpoints every workday, one way or the other. It's huge. And so but now it's front and center in this country. So could you give us some teaching, some insight as a person, as a business person who deals with expats and has an understanding rather than somebody willy-nilly off the street being asked a question? I don't do that. But you're an expert in the industry and caring person, so I'm not afraid of what you're going to say, and the microphone is yours. Please
What's the
tell
question
us.
you're looking for me to
Yeah,
answer?
how should we as Americans understand what you're going through in that small country, and the thinking of monitoring, not closing the borders, but being really careful who gets in?
I think there is no. I think we're seeing similar things here in the Netherlands, as at least what media is reporting about sentiment in the United States. There's a lot of reasons why people decide to uproot themselves and their families and move to a different location. And then there's people in countries that have a passport privilege and economic privilege that they might not be as aware of, because if you're within a national border system, everybody you know in your environment has those same benefits, has those same systems supporting them, has to a certain degree the same level of opportunities. I think the Netherlands is an interesting country. We are in economic rankings in positions that don't make a whole lot of sense if you look at the size of our population. But if you look at our history, that explains quite a lot. But again, that is something that some people feel that it's our history that explains this. Some people don't really know what explains it, but they take it as is. My personal viewpoint would be they take that for granted, but I think ignorance is key in this. If you don't know what you don't know, and people usually come from places of good intentions, but it's really complicated what we're looking at right now. If I look at it from a child's perspective, as a parent, looking at my own two kids, I have an 11 and a 9-year-old, I would do a lot of things to put them in a position where they can thrive and have a successful chance at life. So to that degree, on a personal level, I do understand some of the movements that are happening. And
Yeah.
then every now and then I find myself in a semi-political conversation with friends or other people who care about this. I've never found an answer. I haven't found that this is what I would do if I had the power answer, because it's just incredibly complicated. There is not enough for everybody.
Yeah, Ken?
It's interesting. I'm thinking about children and relocation, just going back to Karlijn's earlier points. I went to public school in San Francisco, in elementary school. It's called Alamo, it still is in operation. And it was very near a functioning fort. The Presidio was actually an in-operation fort. So we would have children our age, again, elementary school, coming in every year, and then they'd be there perhaps for a year or two at most, to a person. They were sociable, they met easily, they fit right in, they talked, and it didn't matter. So this is automatically and inherently fully diverse school, and people got along, and these children were far more flexible and agile than those of us who were in the same elementary school for 6 years. I thought it was just remarkable. They would be there, they'd develop their friendships, and then a year or two later, gone. And we would all be so sad to lose our good friends, and they handled it so remarkably well. And I wonder if that actually developed a life skill for them later, that they were able to handle new, unexpected situations, to engage more easily with strangers, to build relationships. I marvel at what these children who were our peers, we were growing up, handled. And we were there. We'd be upset if they canceled a Cub Scout meeting. Oh my gosh. And yet they could move like this, not only to another location in the US, they could move internationally. So I'm not saying, hey, what do we have? We can do less for the children. I'm just saying I marvel at what these young people were able to handle. And they just simply had adjusted to it and did so extremely well. I remember talking with them. Yeah, that's just part of what growing up is. It's interesting, just such a different way to see what they were going through during their own enforced relocation as the parents were part of the military.
There's amazing research looking into the benefits of highly mobile childhood. And of course, there's something to say about what constitutes as international or expat. If you move from the Netherlands to Belgium, then officially it's international. Whereas if you move from one state in the United States to another, technically it's a domestic relocation. But from a cultural difference perspective, there's something to say about how that experience for a child is very, very similar, actually. And there's other ways that it's not a very simple equation. It's not apples to apples. That high mobility, to your point, brings resilience. Often it brings ethnocultural empathy, the ability to understand people who are different from yourselves because you've been exposed to a high level of diversity. In many instances, it brings multilingualism. It brings a certain flexibility to the brain because of all that exposure. But at the same time, there's a flip side to that same medal. So those high transitions, there's a meta study looking into what factors influence academic performance. And I think out of the top of my head, it's over 200 different factors, with the number one factor being very positive influence. The very bottom factor, so the most negative factor that influences a child's academic performance, is migration. It's relocation. So the fact that you need to move and the educational gaps that you're experiencing as a consequence of that, the experience that your school books are super important one day and then you can basically toss them out the window because you need a whole new set the next day. For a child, it has an impact on their academic performance. And more importantly, a lot of these children grow up into adults that don't feel they belong anywhere. So they're not there's a discrepancy between their passport country that they're associated with. They haven't lived in that country for their entire childhood. Anybody from that passport country would tell them that they should be a local, but then they're not really locals because they've missed all these crucial experiences that the majority population do share amongst each other. But if you put them in a foreign country, it might even be a country that they've spent the majority of their childhood years. They are there with a foreign passport, so they're never going to be a national.
Interesting. Rigo?
Yeah, just to add, like more or less 8 years ago, one of my former employees, Crown, make an article about the connection between the movie Inside, In and Out from Disney and the fact that I guess the little girl moved from, I don't remember, I guess from Michigan, from San Francisco, something like that. But this article is very interesting, even it's old. And if I find it, I will share it with you, because as we know, this very popular movie reflects what happens inside of the mind of the children. And the article was about, from a cultural perspective, what they feel when they move from one city, even from one city to another, even in the same country. So yeah, I think that this is, I think this could be interesting for Karlijn, who focuses on that. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, Ron Cooper, I know you have a lot to say on this. You've had a military experience, which means you were relocated, right?
Yes, Marty, my wife, and I relocated through many different countries. And in the context of open borders, Ed, I think one of the things that Marty and I tried to do is assimilate ourselves into the culture, the country in which we were traveling to. We were not there to try to change them. However, if they did want to try to determine what our core values are, how we live, and so forth, and they want us to help them maybe transform anything, I'm happy to do that. I think it's a matter of whether we're there to assimilate or whether we're there to, and assimilate might mean to give someone, and just with our presence, as opposed to, I use the term frequently, be a freeloader, to take whatever is being offered free from various countries. But we try to assimilate with the people we're with. I am a big advocate of diversity in that context. I know that everyone on this call has come from different cultures and has different perspectives. And I want to learn from, and I want to hear about what perspectives you have. And it's in that context where I view assimilating. I'm very interested in what you're doing. And in the context of children, yes, it's very important for Marty and me to raise our children in a way that are accepting of people. Let's assume we fairly closely share each other's values. We certainly would not endorse those that are doing anything illegal, immoral, but as as people have varying perspectives, as long as our values somewhat align, we want to be very accepting of those people, and the children are very accepting of other people when they're in that type of culture.
Well, thank you so much. So let's turn the discussion now to focus on taking in mind what we just learned from each other. The chart behind me and generations at work, and that top across the top is the age brackets. How does that approach relate to what we were just talking about being a newcomer, or being with different people, new people? Ken, you have years of experience, top level in a corporate environment. People hesitate now to use the word management, people management. I've been listening to Stephen Howard a lot. So people involvement, and this multi-generations at work is the exact same topic, isn't it? Of multicultural, people are different. How do you communicate across age brackets in the workplace, Ken?
Yeah, I think you're reading Stephen Howard's work, so he likes the word leadership as opposed to managing people to lead them. He likes the approach of you're managing resources and assets and things like that. Yeah, I think when I look at the generational differences, my kind of overarching thought is that we can learn from new generations and they can learn from us. Yeah, there are different focuses that we see as the years go by, where there's more of a focus on collaboration and inclusion and flexibility and technology and actually getting even onto the remote aspects of work, which I know is somewhat controversial these days. But the point is that other generations have information they can provide to the younger ones and younger ones to us. The old days of the master, if you will, in quotes, and the apprentice is gone, because the young people are coming in with skills that the so-called skilled individuals don't have. So there's a real opportunity for learning and growth and collaboration by not stereotyping, not automatically throwing younger people into one box or another. There are plenty of people at very senior levels in all aspects of their lives who are quite technologically savvy. So we can't come in with stereotypes just because we see a younger or older person and think, oh, they know a lot or they don't know much. But rather to be open and recognize we can really learn from each other and we can both grow that way. So I think the chart is terrific. You look at the values that are being espoused on it, and they're important for any generation across the generations. So I kind of look at it as really an opportunity to learn, grow, and develop. And that's really kind of the overall arching point that pulls all of this together, at least in my mind.
Did you, and do you advocate now as a consultant to industry, having a workshop, purposely bringing together from different generations into a meeting room, and like we're doing now, going around the table, giving voice to whatever is of interest?
I haven't really done workshops. I'm not sure if that's the best way to do it, as opposed to working with your team. And if there are any issues or questions that develop, let's talk about it. But somehow I get a little concerned and just saying, here are the 10 key points you need to know about working with Gen Z. Because frankly, some of them apply to us that aren't in Gen Z. And some Gen Z individuals don't even adhere to what's there. I get concerned about stereotyping. So I wouldn't want to just bring them in and say, hey, here's what it is, as opposed to look at here's where workplaces are going. They are more open. There's more two-way communication. There's more focus on employee development. There's more feedback and the entire process, as we talk about feed forward, but there's feedback, recognition, all those values that really have been important for a long time, but they're perhaps a little bit more visible in today's workplace. So I think I like to approach it more on what's happening in the individual organization, as opposed to, we're going to sit down and here are the 10 things you need to know about Gen Z. I think it's more than that. It's really, I really look at it from that two-way side.
Thank you. Ron, you're an expert in training, doing training, and this is exactly what's needed here, in my view.
Yeah, I totally agree, Ed. And it may not be workshops, but we do need to adapt to each other. I'm going to give you a very recent example. Yesterday, I was earlier this week, I am trying to get Marty's computer up and running, and I have done some things on my own, and I reset her computer, and we're maybe 85–90% there. But I will tell you that I certainly want to know people's strengths. And I would probably believe that a millennial or a Gen Z would probably have more computer strengths than I do. And so I would welcome what they know to help me determine what I need to know. And so, again, I think of it as strengths. And the top line there, some of the defining traits are, yes, in a very general sense, that but as we learn each other's strengths, I like to stay away from labeling or stigmatizing, stereotyping. That okay, irrespective of what your age is, yep, there are some general trends, but I'm very interested in every individual, in what their strengths are, and I want to capitalize on those strengths. And then there are ways of effectively speaking with people, in other words, adapting to them, their personality traits. And but it's my willingness to work with other people, because I do want to be very effective in working with and integrating other people.
Ken?
Yeah, Ron's 100% right. I absolutely agree with his thoughts on this. And we all know people at very high level, people who are not in Gen X, Gen Y, or any, but they're very technologically savvy. I think as a group, look, the younger generations grew up with technology. It was nothing foreign to them. It's part of their individual hardwiring. So they are more inclined and more likely to have a facility with it. I mean, I grew up with a typewriter, and then the big deal, oh my gosh, electric typewriters. Oh, this is just amazing. And it's quite a difference now. I remember my dad told me at the turn of the century, that's coming into the 20th century, there was talk about closing the copyright office, because basically what's been invented is pretty much invented. We're not going to see much new going on. Look at the world. Look at the world that we've all grown up in. So in terms of building and learning, I agree with Ron. We want to understand each other as individuals, skills, abilities, interests, aptitudes, work style, values, ethics, and the full spectrum, and build from there. And the team that we're working with, we can learn from, we can build ourselves, and they can build from us, and we end up overall with a much stronger team. But having that open-mindedness, and just as Ron said, and we mentioned earlier, not coming in with stereotypes, because that's going to take us down the wrong path. Even if we think this person's young, must know a lot about this particular technology, it's not automatically true. Maybe not. So we want to understand the team we're working with as individuals.
Pardon me.
Do they bring you to tears? I choked you up.
No, I can. I'll add on to that while Ed is taking care of himself. But no, I think it's very much a matter of being open to work with each other, and again, emphasize the strengths. And it is a matter of just being willing to adapt to. One of the very common stereotypes I have heard, and perhaps most people on this call have heard, is that those people don't have the same work ethic as I do. And you're expected to be here at whatever time, and you stay here until, and so forth. And I think there is a discipline. I think there is an expectation there. But and when you're in a company that has a job to do and you have clients, yeah, we have to pay attention to that. Now, do I need to be at my desk at that entire X hours a day? Or is it more a matter of doing what I was asked to do? And do I need to be right there at my desk? Or is it more so the output that is needed? And I think we need to adapt to that. So I'm not trying to define, or I'm not trying to lessen corporate standards at all, but it is, I think, being adaptive to some people on any given day might work best, but let's just say out in the yard. And so it's I'm being a little bit facetious, but what I am trying to say is let's be adaptive as long as the output is produced.
Excuse me for my coughing. Rigo?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's very interesting what Ken and Ron is sharing about the way we adapt. We have biases and things like that. No, I mean, I'm nothing else to add rather than perhaps explaining a little bit about how things are changing also in terms of bringing the artificial intelligence now to the current way of working, which seems to be now normal. And yeah, I think this is bringing us another way of communication, and it's expanding the way we even communicate with ourselves, but with other people. And I don't know, it seems that we will have coworkers that are AI in the next years. I don't know how this is gonna work, but certainly I'm curious about these kind of hybrid models where we will have, let's say, people or entities that reply or concerns in a very robotic way rather than with the feeling or things like that. But yeah, I think this is like something that currently is catching my attention, and I wonder how it's going to progress that in the coming years.
And the work place, is it going to become more of like Hollywood, gig working? Highly skilled people, but hardly any contract. It's just do a job, you have a skill, we need the skill to blend in with what's going on over there for a period of time.
Oh, that's such a good question. I think some roles will be more like that, but I still think we will still have organizations that will call for a more traditional approach. But you know, we have independent, well, now we call them independent consultants, independent contractors. You have to be very careful with, because they can actually be outsiders who are functioning as employees, and that's an issue. But you know, we'll have independent consultants, and I think there may well be more of that as we go on, but it's still within the context and framework of a fully functional organization, an organized entity. Just as a side note, one difference I have noticed is in voicemail. If you want to communicate with Gen Z, Gen Y, do not leave a long voicemail. In fact, you're better just sending a text. If I see a 35-second voicemail, I know that's not going to be from a Gen X or Y or even a Z. They don't function that way. They don't want, hey, this is Ken calling. I tried to call you. I reached you. I just want to tell you, just if they're not there, you hang up. They'll look. They'll see missed call. They may get back to you. They'll probably send you a text, but they might not get back to you at all. But point being is that they like technology a lot more than the older generations do as a group. There's a stereotype, but that's something to keep in mind. And I think of those ads for, is it Progressive Insurance? We can't stop you from turning into your parents. It's a very clever approach. You know, they'll have someone taking a picture. Okay, hold it now. 1, 2, 3. And the guy goes, you don't need to count. And just points like that to communicate. Again, if we really want to build the relationship, we also have to make sure as individuals that we are understanding where that person is coming from and how they most effectively communicate, and try to reach out to them in the same way. And that's important to keep in mind. If we're using outdated or old technology, gee, I left you a voicemail, why didn't you? That's not going to resonate with a lot of certainly today's millennials.
Right. So I use WhatsApp to text before making a call. And then that sets the stage for a call. But rather than using a telephone, let's do a Zoom, let's look at each other.
I think Ron was going to say something. Yeah.
Ed and Ken, I think what you're discussing right now is very important. That I frequently ask people, what is your preferred communication media? And it may be WhatsApp, it may be text, it may be voicemail. And, I'm of the age that voicemail was invented a while back. I was kind of raised on that, but not everybody does that. And so I know that email messages, some people get thousands a day. So don't bother sending an email. But I want to know and I want to align myself with your preference. I don't want to force you to accept what I do. And so, and now here's another thing. If I send you a message by whatever your preferred media is, now it's a matter of what are your values? What is your expectation of getting back with me with at least an interim response? Or you may say, hey, if I don't get to it for 3 or 4 weeks, no problem. Or if I set up an appointment with you and I'm a no-show, I might interpret that as or at least think that, well, maybe you don't respect my time. And so I think it's a matter of what is it? And one of my fundamental core values is I respect you and your time. And I want to tell you even 3 or 4 hours in advance if I even think I may be late for a call. But that's a little bit about me. And but I think that's in some ways a value that maybe we've lost or has seemed to be lessened. That, well, hey, what's your problem if I didn't respond to your message within 3 weeks? And well, maybe I need to specify that this is urgent or something, but in whatever way to try to create some, well, meet each other's expectations.
So it's a matter of courtesy, that whatever courtesy means. It's like an 18th century word, but that's actually real live today, because there's different ways of showing courtesy. Exactly what you just said, Ron. Because I would bet because of your pilot training, how long it'll be before you touch down at this rate of speed. And so you're going to know where you're going to be at 3:46.5 p.m. At the current rate. Rigo, I see your hand.
Yeah, thank you, Ed. I want to share with you an interesting behavior that is happening currently in Mexico, specifically in Mexico City, where we typically have earthquakes like every 5 or 10 years. It's kind of normal. Since I was a little child, I've always have experienced earthquakes. The point is that you know, let's say about perhaps 20 years ago, when an earthquake happens here in Mexico, the first thing that you do typically was to call someone to ask, "Are you okay? Are you safe?" It was the typical way of communicating. And then we have an issue which it was about the telephone lines collapsing, because everybody wants to know that their family was okay. Now the ways of communication have changed at the level that we all know, using WhatsApp by sending a text message or where any kind of application we have. And this is changing. But the last earthquake that we have here, I don't remember, it was like 3 or 4 years ago. It was a little bit devastating. But we have a lot of losses. And for me, in terms of communication, it was shocking that the people didn't call anybody, the people didn't send any message. Instead of that, what they did was sending memes, which is that kind of graphics, trying to communicate something else with words. And I acknowledge that even myself, I didn't call my mom, I didn't call my wife, I didn't call the school of my children. Instead of communicating in a direct way, the first thing that I did, it was sending a meme, which is a kind of funny and jokey thing about expressing ourselves. But yeah, I think this is an interesting behavior in my own experience. And coming back to what Ron was saying about the courtesy and the manners of communicating in a proper way, I come also from that school, and it's amazing how things has changed with the fact that I do remember that maybe 10 years ago, communicating with an emoji, it was respectful. You need to express exactly what you think. And now it seems that even in huge corporations, an emoji is kind of the new normal. And yeah, I mean, it is like it is. We need to adapt, but things have changed.
Mm. Ron, do you use an emoji? I've never seen you do that.
I do. Now, I've recently learned what they are and so forth. I've seen other people do. So, to a degree, Ed, I'm mimicking what other people do, thinking that, okay, well, if you do it, I guess that's somewhat expected, accepted, and so forth. So I think, okay, well, where are these emojis? And so I had to ask somebody, where are they? And then I found that, okay, well, you go here and there are thousands of them. And so yeah, I guess one style of communicating is you make a statement and then you immediately, well, intersperse within that statement or at the end, the beginning, or you put an emoji and okay. But I will say, Ed, that there are forms of communication that I call faceless and voiceless. Some people don't recognize it as that way, but you know, we're on a live Zoom here where we actually are looking at each other in real time, and I just feel that is that is a social norm. That's a value that, yeah, to a degree we've gotten away from, and I'm not opposed to communicating by text. I call faceless, voiceless type thing, but I don't think there's anything that's going to replace personal interaction with each other. And I personally like that across the table where we're eating together. Some people call that breaking bread together, but that's a part of my upbringing, and that's part of what I'm used to. And I do understand that with the invention of technology, faceless, voiceless communication, that's becoming a little bit lesser important to some people. But I do believe that nothing ultimately is going to replace effective personal interface communication interactions.
That's really fascinating. Well, we have about 5 or 6 minutes remaining here. So, um, so, so Rigo, you use the word meme, and I was thinking that's the first time I've ever heard that. When I see M-E-M-E, it's a meme of some kind, like a
Yeah.
cartoon thing. But a
Yeah.
meme that's really cute. I really like that. But I think
To
I'm
be
gonna start using that.
to be honest, I don't even know what's exactly the meaning of meme from a technology perspective. I know what it means from a biology perspective, which it means all about replicating. In terms that how an idea replicates so easily that at some point we take it as a real. Then this is the way that culture builds at some point, that replicating ourselves, then we propagate and we take it as a new normal. But yeah, I think Mimi, it's the most informal way of saying something, and it also brings a lot of misunderstandings, because if I send a face like this, and perhaps I'm trying to say that I get scared with an earthquake, but perhaps someone else could take it as an offense, and that depends also also in the culture. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So, Ron, have you ever found a meme that looks like a parachute, and you put that?
I'm certain that exists, Ed. And yes, I would use that if I found it. Yes, I would use a meme or meme that indicates anything fast, high flying, and so forth. But then I have to say, okay, where are they? So I need to refer to people to
When you
tell me
need
where
it?
they are.
Yeah, I mean, because a real parachute, you know where it is at all times. Pull that
Yep.
cord. This is funny. I think we should end the meeting now. Laughing and not coughing. I'm sorry that I coughed. I don't know what a meme would be, and coughing.
That's all good.
All right. Well, see you again on Global TV.
Thank you.
You.
All right.
Bye.
Thanks, Ed,
It's
everybody.
great to see all
Bye.
of you.
Thank you.